Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Yes, it's me, Graham Moore, otherwise known as Daddy Dragon, live all the way from Devonshire, I should say. Um, Before I go into the major parts of this show, I'm going to ask everyone watching and listening to this to like the show, to subscribe, and to share. And remember, if you're on YouTube and you're watching on catch up, come over to Rumble, put in the full English show, and come and give us a subscribe, right? Because it's important. It is the only real free speech platform. Now, what I'm going to do, does everyone understand? I always start the conversation with that. I shouldn't really, because I know many of you do. I didn't just come into this during COVID. I was involved with all of this, the law and other things, well before COVID. But COVID is when people was really getting into me and saying, "Listen, Graham, there's got to be something in the Constitution that helps us." So before I get into, there's a couple of things I want to talk about, and I just want to make sure I show you something that most people, many people watching this will remember. Let me have a look. We're going on to there. Let's put that on. Right, which was this card. Some of you will remember it, some of you won't, many of you will, right? And yes, this is a real card. We've still got many of them here, but it was this that was made up. Bill of Rights 1688. Chapter 2 was the Constitution is the solution. This was back in 2020. And the back of that card, this is my own personal card, so it's a bit grotty, if you want to call it that. Let me see if I can pull that over so everyone can see it. There seems to be there's a really annoying part of that I can't get on there, but I'm going to do it on that way like that, right? In other words, there's a light that's shining right above the table. My constitutional statutory rights are not affected by the regulations brought under the Public Health Control of Diseases Act 1984 or the Coronavirus Act 2020 by order of the Bill of Rights 1688-89, right? And then it took you to our website where we had all that information in there, right? So I'm just making sure that everyone understands it. We also wrote a number of detailed common law, proper real common law, not the bullshit that we see from people out there at the moment, which was published by the Daily Mail. I co-authored it with a number of people that I'm really grateful for their assistance, and I know they was grateful for mine. And we went through and we put all this information out there. It was sent to a number of people in the schools. The letter, which was a pre-action letter, was sent, dated, etc. It was taken generally by grandparents into their grandchildren's school, where it was handed to the head of the school, to the chairperson of the school board of governors, and to the form tutor. And basically what it said was, this is the law on vaccinations, this is the law on children and them having the ability to assent or dissent to any medical intervention. And then we went all through the different laws, and there's quite a lot of it. Without discussing it on the show tonight, everyone should be aware of that. So I'm just showing you. We've been doing this for a very long time. Not just as what it is at the moment. And that card was produced by a number of our people that were pulled by the police, and the people said, "Listen, I've got constitutional rights," and it was also used, just to make sure everyone's aware. It was also used. Once it goes back to my main screen, it takes a bit of a while to kick in. It was also used, and our arguments were used in a number of court cases. We had a lot of people with £10,000 fines that come to us, and we literally give them the advice. On the back, it says you want a trial, and then you would use the English Bill of Rights to say that it's an excessive fine, and it is a cruel and unusual punishment for what you're doing, blah, 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 blah. And that all worked because all them cases were dropped, right? That's it. So none of them cases they made admissions to. And again, Charlie Staples, for example, that was arrested under alleged COVID regulations, although they never said that when they arrested him, that was thrown out at an early stage by the magistrate, right? And they basically told the police then to stop arresting people. So all I'm doing before I get into this is I've just shown you that. What I'm going to do is have a brief conversation about this guy, which you're about to see on your screen. Hopefully I can bring it up. I'm going to put this information out there anyway. Hopefully, well, let me come off. All right, let me come off of this and then show you. It's a bit of a long, it's nearly 10 minutes. But after that, we're going to go through one of these books, the English Bill of Rights, and I'm going to try and make sure that you all understand that the only thing that you should be talking about out there at the moment, none of this common law bullshit. You should be saying to people, we have a constitution. You have defrauded us, men in Parliament, out of our constitution, and then show people exactly what we're talking about. So before I do anything else, I'm going to copy that link and put it out there for Tracy. There it is. And by the way, many people have said to me that not only are they now Graham talking about the Constitution, they're also talking about ivermectin, benzodol, which I've been talking about, and assisting people with. These people are going to be attacking me no end, right? Because they don't like what we're actually telling people. So I've put that information out there. What I'm going to do is go into this. I want you to listen carefully to this. Hopefully we've come back onto here. Let me share it. What you're going to see is a big black screen. Let's see if it comes up. There it is. There's a black screen coming up. Here you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I will echo Senator Johnson's comments about your opening statement, Mr. Chairman. I think it was dead on. Very, very well done. Mr. Fauci, do you know who David Schertler is?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Right, just to make sure, I'll make everyone aware of this. The right to remain silent is an ancient right of the English. It goes back well into the 4th century. It originates from canon law and ecclesiastical law. It is ancient because you didn't have to incriminate yourself, and especially during what was known as the Inquisition. There's some really bad stuff to do with blasphemy, some of the things they could do to you, and it was sort of a cross-pollination from Roman law into common law, right? So what I'm going to do now is continue with this just to make sure everyone's aware of it.
Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. What does the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution say?
Yeah. On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
No, I'm just asking you what it says.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
I'm going to give the Constitution to my aide. He'll bring it over to you so you can have it for future reference. I think it's something that every American should know what the Constitution says. Do you know who wrote the Fifth Amendment?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
So you're invoking a right that you don't know who wrote it or what it says. Is that correct?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Wow. All right, let me tell you who David Schertler is for the audience, because he was ejected by the chairman. He's a high-profile criminal attorney. He's represented some really great people, like Senator Bob Menendez. Maybe that's somebody who my Democrat colleagues may remember took gold bars as bribes from the Egyptians. And there's an article here in the Washington Free Beacon that talks about why you would hire a guy like David Schertler. And the comment is, if you're in deep shit, that's who you call. Do you feel like you're in deep shit?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Clearly, what you think today is that somehow you're above reproach. Somehow you feel like you don't need to be treated like a normal American. Can you do me a favor in the audience and stand up if during the time of the COVID pandemic, you were called a racist for calling the virus a Wuhan virus or the China virus? If you thought the 6-foot rule was total crap, if you thought the vaccine wasn't something that you should take, if you thought it was outrageous the way the mask policy was rolled out, if you were fired from your job for not taking that vaccine, including members of the military, if you thought closing schools was catastrophically stupid, and that you thought that during these times saying these things made you somehow a lesser human being. Dr. Fauci, can you just turn around and look at the people behind you? You're not willing to do that? That's not a question. It's not a question. To your lawyer, it's not a question. It's a request. All you have to do is look up from your lawyers and look at the people who were absolutely shamed for saying what we know now to be the truth. You can't even look at them? That's a question. Are you able to look at them? You can sit down in the audience. There was a mom in Ohio during the...
I'm going to stop it there, because for the American and English audience, I'm going to say that King Henry VIII, for a 12-year period, had a specific law in statute that dealt with poisoners, and it boiled them alive. If they was tried and convicted of poisoning, they were boiled alive, preferably in pig fat. Just to make sure everyone's aware of that, there was a statutory, and they brought it out for a reason, because people started poisoning each other because it was the easiest way of getting away with murder. Maybe we should bring it back for Fauci.
Depth of the coronavirus pandemic, decided to go to her high school football game for her son. They hadn't been out much. The kids had been learning at school, and then the school got shut down. They hadn't really gotten much out of that education. As any parent knew, that remote learning was no learning at all. But it was a Friday night. Her son wanted to go watch a buddy go play football. So they went to the stadium. They sat alone, far from everybody else, just a mom, a dad, a few kids. They didn't feel they needed to wear masks because it was stupid, because they were outside. They all live together. They're not near anybody. Dr. Fauci, do you know what happened to that mom and that family? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
They were dragged out of that stadium and arrested. Those policies were put in place because you had moronic politicians that listened to the words of a megalomaniac who was more interested in having met a Kardashian than the suffering of the American people, and that is you. Your advice to communities like that, to idiotic politicians who enforce those rules, arrested that mom for watching a football game with her own family outside. When that story broke, I said to myself, I cannot stand idly on the side and watch this happen. It was about 6 years ago today that I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the fuck do you think you were for doing that? It is a total disgrace what you did to this country. And if my Democrat colleagues are standing there defending you, I hope the voters of the United States of America watch the clips of every one of you doting on a guy who was more interested in being a celebrity than saving American people. I will make it my mission to make certain that every single one of those Democrats who did that will see that clip over and over and over again. Because there is no defense of what you did. You may have had a 50-plus year legacy of public service, but it ends in total and complete disgrace. So let me ask you an opportunity to answer one question. Will you apologize, just apologize, to the people who you harmed through your actions? Will you say, do you have the dignity to just say you're sorry?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
So you won't apologize to the military members who Joe Biden summarily dismissed from the military for not taking the vaccine?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the business owners that lost their business, shattered their lives, and they'll never recover?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the moms who had to force their infant children, 2, 3, 4-year-olds, to put masks on, and what that did and how that traumatized those kids?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to the family members of the people who died because they took your advice and not only got the first vaccine, but the 5, 6 other boosters that they did not need?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to that mom from Ohio for being arrested for watching a football game with her family?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
So you didn't know who wrote the Fifth Amendment. It's James Madison. Lived in this town. I can only wonder what he would think of somebody like you invoking his writings to shield culpability for the actions that you took. It's no secret why you have to hire the biggest dirtbag attorney on the planet, because of what you did. I hope you're paying him well. And I hope that one way or the other, somewhere, sometime, you answer for your crimes.
Right, there's a few things that I need to talk to you about there. Hopefully you all saw that and you heard it, right? I'm going to say a few things.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm going to come off of that. I am going to go back to my main screen. All right. What you just got there was an education. He is the highest paid bureaucrat in the United States of America. In fact, he earns twice as much, in fact, more than that, than the President of the United States of America. He's got the best counsel, meaning representation, in America, with a team who got thrown out and a team of lawyers sitting behind him. He didn't say, I've got nothing to hide, I've done nothing wrong. He's also got, believe it or not, a pardon, right? Going all the way back to 2015. And yet, what did he do? He exercised his right to silence that comes from England. In American Constitution, it's the Fifth Amendment. It's incorporated into the English Bill of Rights. It goes all the way back to the 4th century. There's a stack of stories and laws behind it because we're a very old nation. But what I'm trying to say to you now is even the cleverest man on $500,000 or £400,000 a year, plus expenses, plus bonuses, and earn $1 million plus during COVID, and getting all the kickbacks he was getting, and having a federal protection 24 hours, 7 days a week, and having a team of lawyers behind him, right? He didn't sit there and say, I've got nothing to hide, I'll answer your questions, right? He said, I plead the Fifth Amendment. I have the right to silence, because he knows what's coming. Now, the difference is in, and again, it's on the actual detail of the show. In America, in particular, and there's English law that backs this up, because he received a full unconditional pardon, right, going all the way back to 2014, he cannot be prosecuted, even if he admits it and does a full confession, right? What he's doing now is protecting his masters, and he is showing complete contempt. And what they can prosecute him for now, which isn't pardonable in terms of it hasn't been pardoned, right? And you will see a situation where certain people, so what I'm trying to say is he can now get whatever it is, 5 years imprisonment for contempt by putting out the Fifth Amendment, because he's already been pardoned. This is a legal issue that I have no doubt whatsoever is going to be argued now, right? My point to you is his barristers have correctly argued or told him, advised him, Fifth Amendment. And you know the reason why? Because if he opens his mouth and it turns out that the auto pen that pardoned him, right, is unlawful under the Constitution, anything he says in there, right, he's looking at a life sentence or execution, right, for what he's done to the American people and the wider group of people. Secondly, it is better to get a 5 and keep your mouth shut and get done for something else. Only in this circumstance, I may add, right? Because if he hadn't received a pardon and he went for the Fifth Amendment, you could not then say he's in contempt, because he is exercising his right. But the right doesn't exist if you've been given a pardon. If you look at the aircraft industry, this is a group of people from an engineering perspective that offer a no-blame investigation. So what they do is they say if there's any serious aircraft crashes or anything like that, they have a full investigation, and everyone is told, tell us exactly what's happened, tell us if you think you've done something wrong, tell us. No one's going to blame anyone. We need to get to the bottom of this for safety reasons, right? So no one would argue against that policy. Now, getting a pardon meant he had a proper opportunity there to tell the world, this is what happened, and this is why I done it, and nothing would have happened. But there's ifs and buts. But what you just got was a full education on the right to silence by a person that has been involved in administrative, an administrator, the bureaucracy, the seventh floor, whatever you want it, the deep state, whatever you want to describe it as. He has been involved in that for a very long time, right? Highest paid bureaucrat in the country with the best legal team ever assembled, right? More so than what the president had under impeachment twice, and they have advised him to plead the fifth, right? The right to remain silent. That is the best education you're ever going to see. And he says he has done nothing wrong, but instead of arguing and answering questions, he pleaded the fifth. Right, so I'm telling every single person out there, right? If you ever get arrested, if you ever get asked questions, you think about that and you say no comment. You don't say what he said, because we have a slightly different, it's called no comment. Or, like I said, just pick a point in the wall and stare at the wall. And then they'll say to you, and don't ever answer any questions. During that questioning, they started going off piste slightly and saying, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? It's got nothing to do with any of this. Do you want to? You don't answer one question, right? Because if you answer a single question, they'll bring all of them questions in front of a jury. Now, if this ever goes in front of a jury, they won't be able to bring that in, right? So I'm just making sure everyone understands. Now I've done that and brought this in, there are many other clips that are all over Twitter. I've seen many people getting very, very angry, etc. Don't get angry, get even, right? England has the greatest constitution, is the oldest nation on earth, with a common law constitution that protects you, right? So, again, what I'm going to do now is make sure, and we're going to go through this tonight, and you're going to understand exactly what we're doing, right? So, and again, this is going to be a long readout, but I honestly believe that everyone out here should understand exactly, because this is the original, right? This is not something that I'm just making up. Let me go off of that one. Cancel that again, and we're going to go on to this. There it is. So we're going to go blank screen. You should see me back in a couple of seconds. Hopefully I will bring this down and we'll get as much of this in as possible so you can read it off the screen. You understand where this book comes from. It is the Select Statutes, Cases and Documents. Let me go back into this. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll stick that pen in there, raise that up. The reason I'm doing this is because I want people to understand, right? This is the more serious situations, and I can go into detail with this, happened mid 1800s, right? But select statutes and cases and documents to illustrate the English constitutional history. This is a very old document or booklet. If you have a look on here, it illustrates the history with a supplement from 1832, edited, and it should tell you when it was published. There it is there. So again, just to make sure everyone's got that, hopefully you can see that. It was first published in 1904, right? So a long time, well in excess of 100 years ago. This is an original, and I can show you some other bits and pieces out there at the moment, which I won't show you at the moment. But there it is. You've got a big table of everything in there. You got lots of different things in the House of Commons, the first Militia Act, the Test Act, you've got the declarations, you've got habeas corpus amendments, you've got the legislation of the Convention Parliament, page 55, the letter summoning Convention Parliament, all of that is in this book, right? So what I'm going to do now, and it gives you all of the constitutional cases, the really important ones, like that one, Burdett versus Abbott, which I'm going to go into in a couple of minutes. But I am going to show you this, bring this down, because what we're going to do is a proper readout of this information so everyone knows exactly what we're talking about, right? There. So again, the reason I'm drumming this out there, I want everyone out there to remember one thing, right? You have been deceived, right? Not only by the state, by Parliament itself, and by the Crown, you have been deceived by the mainstream media, and in particular by solicitors and barristers and judges, right? The Bill of Rights, there it is. That's the short title. And the long title, which is really important, an act declaring the rights and liberties of the subject and settling the succession of the crown. What is the most important part of that to us? The rights and liberties of the subject. We are subjects. Anyone out there who sits there and says, I'm not a subject of anyone, you are a subject of England, right? I am not suggesting to you in any way that you have allegiance to King Charles III, because it's my personal opinion he has abdicated, and we have the right to bring that before a court, and we will be, right? Don't worry, people, you'll understand in a few weeks' time, maybe just over a few weeks, what I'm talking about. But here goes. Whereas the Lords spiritual and temporal and commons assembled at Westminster lawfully, fully and freely representing all the estates of the people of this realm, that means all of us, right? Did upon the 13th day of February in the year of our Lord 1688 present unto their majesties then called and known by the names and style William and Mary, Prince and Princess of Orange, being present in their proper persons, a certain declaration and writing made by the said Lords and Commons in the words following viz. Right? Whereas the late King James II, by the assistance of diverse evil counsellors, judges, and ministers employed by him, did endeavour to subvert and extirpate the Protestant religion and the laws and liberties of this kingdom by assuming and exercising a power of dispensing with and suspending laws and the execution of laws without consent of Parliament. Right? So there's a whole reason why I'm bringing this up. But again, got Janet's legs in there. I'll bring that down. Pull that over. Hopefully we're going to see the rest of this. Touch wood, you're going to be able to see it, right? I'm going to try. If I can read it off my screen, people will be able to read this later on, right? So let me put that so it focuses properly. By committing and prosecuting diverse worthy prelates for humbly petitioning to be excused from concurring to be said assumed power, by issuing and causing to be executed a commission under the Great Seal for erecting a court called the Court of Commissioners for Ecclesiastical Causes. But this is where it reads out what the wrongs are, right? This is the things that they did wrong and they was rectifying. By levying money for and the use of the crown by pretense of prerogative for other time and in other manner than they was granted by Parliament, by raising and keeping a standing army within this kingdom in time of peace without consent of Parliament and quartering soldiers contrary to law, by causing several good subjects being Protestants, so remember it was the Protestants that was under attack, to be disarmed at the same time when Papists were both armed and employed contrary to law. By contrary to law, meaning no one can disarm us. By violating the freedom of election of members to serve in Parliament. By prosecutions in the Court of the King's Bench for matters and causes cognizable only onely in Parliament and by diverse other arbitrary and illegal courses. And whereas the late years partial, corrupt and unqualified persons have returned and served on juries and trials, and particularly diverse jurors in trials on high treason, which were not freeholders. So anyone, in other words, they was putting anyone in trials and using them in different ways and using them on jurors. They weren't allowed to do it. As far as I know, this is the first time anyone's read out the whole of the English Bill of Rights as originally enacted, right? In the actual words that they was using, right? Were not freeholders. An excessive bail have been required of persons committed in criminal cases to elude. Let me make sure I don't push that too far off, but you should be able to get there from that. Let me make sure I'll come back down again. Treason, which was not freeholders. An excessive bail have been required of persons committed in criminal cases to elude the benefit of the laws made for the liberty of the subjects, of the laws made for the liberties of the subject. And excessive fines have been imposed, right? So remember what that was about and what that was about, right? And when they started throwing out all these things, I said it was against the Bill of Rights, right? That they couldn't just pop this excessive fine, £10,000, walking out your house or being in a lawful assembly was unlawful against the English Bill of Rights. If excessive fines are imposed and illegal and cruel punishments inflicted, what they actually did to Charles Staple, and several grants and promises made of fines or forfeitures before any conviction or judgment against a person upon whom the same were to be levied, all of which are utterly and directly contrary to the known laws and statutes and freedoms of this realm. Right? Really important that people understand that part. Notice there is a pencil mark there that was put in place by someone else who read that, not me, right? Possibly in 1909, which is when this book has got a library stamp on it. And whereas the said late King James II having abdicated, so understand what's being said here, because in the Declaration of Rights it explains, and it was the Commons that decided that he had abdicated. There was it was whether he was absconded or he abdicated. It was the Commons. I often get this wrong, vice versa. It was the Commons that decided that he had abdicated, and the Lords was trying to say that he had absconded. Right? The legal term abdicated was used, and the reason was that he had, in effect, perjured his oath. Right? And whereas the said King James and II having abdicated the government and the throne being thereby vacant, His Highness and Prince of Orange, whom it had pleased Almighty God to make the glorious instrument of delivering this kingdom from popery and arbitrary power. So it's really important that people know that he was actually liberating us from the Pope and the Jesuits, in effect, and from arbitrary power, because what had happened is the whole of the system had become corrupted. Did, by the advice of the Lord spiritual, temporal, and diverse principal persons of the Commons, cause letters to be written to the Lord spiritual and temporal, being Protestants, and other letters to the several. Let's go back underneath this. Let's see if I can bring this up. So it's a bit. I just want to make sure everyone gets this. This is such an important thing that I want anyone up there to read this after, because it's very rare that you can actually read this in such a concise manner, right? Counties, cities, universities, boroughs, sink ports for the choosing of such persons to represent them, as were the right to be sent to Parliament to meet and sit at Westminster upon 2 and 20th day of January in this year of 1688, and in order to such an establishment as that their religion, laws, and liberties might not again be in danger of being subverted, upon which letters elections having been accordingly made. Right. So again, this was put in place so in the future we could never have our rights, our liberties, or our religion subverted again. This is really important because I'm gonna, if you remind me, I'll also talk about Northern Ireland and why this is so important to Northern Ireland. I mean, crucial to Northern Ireland. Right. So any Northern Irish people listening to this, this is going to be, it should interest you, right? Establishment being subverted and accordingly being made. And thereupon the said Lords spiritual and temporal and commons pursuant to their respective letters and elections being now assembled in full and free representative of this nation, taking into their most serious consideration, so it was well thought about, the best means for attaining the ends of aforesaid, do in the first place as their ancestors in like case have usually done. What they're making reference to in parenthesis there is the Magna Carta. They're also making reference to the Peasants' Revolt, right? This was all discussed in Parliament, right? For the vindicating and asserting their ancient rights and liberties declare that the pretended power of suspended laws or the execution of laws by regal authority without consent of Parliament is illegal. That the pretended power of dispensing with laws or the execution of laws by regal authority, as it have been assumed and exercised of late, is illegal. Remember, down the side there, this is what someone else has marked many, maybe even 100 years ago. That the Commission for erecting the late Court of Commissioners for Ecclesiastical causes and all other commissions and courts of like nature are illegal and pernicious. Why is that so important? Because Jewish law, Sharia, so any other law, any religious type of law is forbidden, including Christian religious courts are forbidden in England, right? Are illegal and pernicious. Pernicious means harmful. The levying money for or the use of the crown by pretence of prerogative without consent of Parliament for longer time or in other manner than the same is or shall be granted is illegal. That it is the right of the subjects to petition the king, and all commitments and prosecutions for such petitioning are illegal. That the raising or keeping of standing army within the kingdom in time of peace, unless it be with consent of Parliament, is against the law. That the subjects which are Protestants may have arms for their defence suitable for their condition and as allowed by law. That means the natural law of of defence, right? You are allowed to defend yourself. It is a sin not to, right? That the election of members of Parliament ought to be free. That freedom of speech and debates or proceedings in Parliament ought not to be impeached or questioned in any court or place out of Parliament. I'm going to read that one out again. That freedom of speech and debates or proceedings, right? So people need to understand the freedom of speech is protected by the English Bill of Rights, not just in Parliament. And then it says, and debates or proceedings in Parliament ought not to be impeached or questioned in any court or place out of Parliament. That excessive bail ought not to be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel or unusual punishments inflicted. We'd already banned torture in 1641. We outlawed it. Scotland, they still had it, right? That jurors ought to be duly impanelled and returned, and jurors which pass upon men in trials for high treason ought to be freeholders. that all grants and promise of fines and forfeitures of particular persons before conviction are illegal and void. So I'm going back over to this side. Apologies for getting this up there. Let's make sure you're all squared off. Right, so you should be able to see that properly. And that the redress of all grievances for the amending and strengthening and preserving of the laws Parliament ought to be held frequently. At that time it was once a year, and then it went once a 3 years. And they do claim, demand, insist upon all and singular. So remember what I just said there. This is crucially important. All and singular, right? So Parliament keeps using Article 9, which was freedom of debates and freedom of proceedings, and you can't question it in court. But all and singular of these rights can never be removed. Demand and insist upon all the singular premises as their undoubted rights and liberties, and that no declaration, judgment, doings, or proceedings to the prejudice of the people in any of the said premises, so in any of them you cannot overwrite them, ought in any wise to be drawn hereafter into consequence or example. To which demand of these their rights they are particularly encouraged by the declaration of His Highness the Prince of Orange as being the only means for obtaining a full redress and remedy therein, having therefore an entire confidence that His said Highness the Prince of Orange will perfect the deliverance so far advanced by him, and that will still preserve them from the violation of their rights, which they have here asserted, and from all other attempts upon their religion, rights, and liberties. Do you all understand what that means? Right? They absolutely cannot touch your Bill of Rights. Right? So we're going to get this. Now, people need to understand this. People need to share this. People need to get this out. This is not a game, people. Right? These are our absolute rights, and no one is allowed to take them away from us. Right? Highness right so far advanced by him, and will still preserve them from violation of their rights, which they have here asserted, and from all other attempts upon their religion, rights, and liberties. The said Lords spiritual and temporal and commons assembled at Westminster do resolve that William and Mary, Princess and Prince and Princess of Orange, be declared King and Queen of England, France and Ireland, and the dominions thereunto belonging, to hold the crown and royal dignity of all said kingdoms and dominions to them. Right now, when that was made, right, when they talk about dominions, the dominions were the settlements, separate settlements in the United States of America. They were not colonies. Colonies only come with, and I want everyone to understand this, when they centralised Parliament and brought Roman law into an English Parliament, that converted them into colonies just like the Romans did, right? Prior to that, they were dominions. And this is why it's so important, because the Americans should understand this. Crown, royal dignity, and said kingdoms and dominions to them, and said to the prince during their lives and the life of their survivors of them, and that the sole and full exercise of the regal power be only in and executed by the said Prince of Orange in the name of the said prince and princess during their joint lives, and after their deceases the said crowns and royal dignity of the said kingdoms and dominions to be heirs of the body of the said prince, princess, and for default of such issue to the princesses Anne of Denmark and the heiress of her body, and for default such issue to the heirs of, let me just bring that down a bit. I've got to get to all of that. Dignity to the body of the princess, such and the issues of Denmark and the heir's body, and for the default such issue to the heirs of the body and said Princess of Orange. And the Lord Spiritual and Temporal and Commons do pray said Prince and Princess to accept the same accordingly, and that the oaths hereafter mentioned be taken by all persons whom the oaths of allegiance and supremacy might be required by law instead of them, and that the said oaths of allegiance and supremacy be abrogated. I, AB, do sincerely promise and swear that I will be the faithful and bear true allegiance to their Majesty King William and Queen Mary. So help me God. I, AB, do swear that I do from my heart abhor, detest, and abjure, and as impious and heretical this damnable doctrine and position that princes excommunicated or deprived by the Pope or any authority. Let me make sure I can bring that up so you can see it on the screen. Hopefully you can. Authority of the See of Rome may be disposed or murdered by their subjects or any other whatsoever. I do declare that no foreign prince, person, prelate, state, or pontificate have or ought to have any jurisdiction, power, superiority, preeminence, or authority, ecclesiastical or spiritual, within this realm. Right? So help me God. Make sure everyone understands what I just said there. That is a supremacy clause. That means Sharia, Judaism, Papism, anything other than the Protestant religion is the only thing that has supremacy in England, right? And that also means that you can't go into the EU, right? Upon which their said majesties did accept the crown and royal dignity of the Kingdom of England, France, Ireland, and the dominions thereunto, belonging according to the resolution and desire of the said Lords and Commons contained in the said declaration, which is why I'll keep say to people there is a trilogy to this. You've got the Declaration of Reasons, the Declaration of Rights, which is private law, and you've got this, which is public law. Kingdoms of England, France, Ireland, and the dominions thereunto, belonging according to the resolution desired said Commons contained in this said declaration. Thereupon the majesties were pleased that the said Lord Spiritual Temporal, being two types of royal concurrence, make effectual provision for the settlement, so it's an absolute settlement, of the religion, laws, and liberties of this kingdom, so that the same for the future might not be in danger again of being subverted, right? So it says it again, right? So this was put in place to protect you in the future. Bearing in mind, we'd already been through a war. We was about to have another one. And people need to start listening to what our Constitution is about. It is to stop wars, right? To which the said Lord Spiritual and Temporal and Commons did agree and proceed to act accordingly. Now, in pursuance of the premises, the said Lord Spiritual and Temporal Commons in Parliament assembled for the ratifying, confirming, and establishing of the said declaration, and the article, clauses, matters, and the things therein contained, by the force of law, made in due form by the authority of Parliament, do pray that it may be declared and enacted that all and singular the rights and liberties asserted and claimed in the said declaration are the true and ancient indelible rights and liberties of the people of this kingdom, and so shall be esteemed, allowed, adjudged, deemed, and taken to be, and that all and every the particulars aforesaid shall be firmly and strictly holden, and observed as they are expressed in the said declaration, and all officers and ministers whatsoever shall serve their majesties and their successors according to the same in all time to come. Right? That means forever. And the Lord Spiritual, Temporal, and Commons, seriously considering how it hath pleased Almighty God in his marvellous providence and merciful goodness to his nation to provide and preserve their majesties' royal persons most happily to reign over us upon the throne of their ancestors, for which they render unto him from the bottom of their hearts and their humblest thanks and praise, do truly, firmly, and assuredly, and in the sincerity of their hearts think, and do hereby recognize, acknowledge, and declare that King James II, having abdicated the government, and their majesties having accepted the crown and the royal dignity as aforesaid, their majesties did become and were and said of the right ought to be by the law of this realm our sovereign liege. Right? So again, this is the first, as far as I know, no one's ever done a readout of this properly, right? To normal everyday subjects of the realm. This is you people that should understand this, right? Let me put that underneath it and see if it's any better, right? Lord and Lady, King and Queen of England, France and Ireland, and the dominions thereunto, belonging in and to those princely persons, the royal state, crown, and dignity of the said realms, with all honours, styles, titles, regalities, prerogatives, powers, jurisdictions, and authorities to the same belonging, and the appertaining are most fully, rightly, entirely invested, incorporated, united, and annexed. Right? It's really important, that word, annexed. And for preventing all questions and divisions in this realm by reason of any pretended titles to the crown, and for preserving a certainty in the succession thereof, in and upon which the unity, peace, tranquillity of this nation doth under God wholly consist and depend, the said Lords spiritual and temporal and commons do beseech their majesties that it may be enacted, established, and declared that the crown and regal government of the said kingdoms and dominions, with all and singular, there it is again, the premises thereunto, belonging and appertaining, shall be and continue to continue to their said majesties and the survivor of them during their lives, and that the life of the survivor of them and the entire perfect full exercise of the regal power and government be only in and executed by his majesty of the same, of both their majesties during their joint lives and after their decease, the said crown and premises shall be and remain to the heiress of the body of her majesties, and for default of such issue to Her Royal Highness the Princess Anne of Denmark and the heiress of her body, and for the default of such issue to the heiress and the body of his said majesty, and thereunto the Lords spiritual, temporal, and commons do, in the name of all the people aforesaid, most humbly and faithfully submit themselves to the heirs' prosperities. Why does that keep going like that? I've got to bring that up again. Sorry. Right. Posterities forever, and do faithfully promise that they will stand and maintain, defend their said majesties, and also the limitation and succession of the crown herein specified and maintained to the utmost of their power with their lives and estates against all persons whatsoever that shall attempt anything to the contrary. Right. So if you try and do anything to the contrary of this, right, it's unlawful. And whereas it hath been found by experience that it is inconsistent with the safety and welfare of this Protestant kingdom to be governed by a popish prince or by any king or queen marrying a papist, remember the king married a papist, the said Lord spiritual and temporal and commons do further pray that it may be enacted that all and every person and person that is, are, or shall be reconciled to or shall hold communion with the see of with the see or Church of Rome, or shall profess the popish religion, or shall marry a papist, shall be excluded and forever incapable to inherit, possess, or enjoy the crown and government of this realm and Ireland and the dominions thereunto belonging or any part of the same have, right? again, I'm just going to bring that up. Hopefully you can still all see that, right? See if I can get it to focus. Use or exercise any legal authority or jurisdiction within the same, and in all and every such case or cases, the people of the realm shall be and hereby absolved of their allegiance. So if you do anything that goes against the English Bill of Rights, so I'm going to ad lib here for a second, hold it there, right? If you do anything, and these people, this parliament, these judges, these lawyers, all these people, the police, anyone, if you do anything that goes against the English Bill of Rights with a subject to the realm, right, you have no longer got allegiance to the King of England. So where does it come from? It starts with the Magna Carta of 1215, right, which the Bill of Rights protects in a number of instances, but it's the Bill of Rights that is really important, right? More important because it is a progression and a protection of everything that the English want, right? So, and the said crown and government shall from time to time descend to and be enjoyed by such persons or persons being Protestants as should have inherited and enjoyed the same in case the said person or persons so reconciled holding communion or profession or marrying or aforesaid were naturally dead, right? So if the King of England is naturally dead because he has married a papist, right? And that every king and queen of this realm who at any time hereafter shall come to and succeed in the imperial crown of this kingdom shall on the first day of the meeting of the first parliament next after his or her coming to the crown, sitting in his or her throne in a house of peers, in the presence of the lords and commons therewith assembled, or at his or her coronation before such person or person shall administer the coronation oath to him or her at the time of his or her taking the said oath, which shall be first happened, make, subscribe, and audibly repeat the declaration mentioned in the statute, and then it tells you what the statute is, made in the 13th year of King Reign, the King Charles II, initialed an act for the more effectual preserving the king's person and government, disabling papists from sitting in either house of parliament. So you should not have any papists sitting in a parliament. But if it shall happen that such a king or queen so in other words, Rees-Mogg should not be in there, let alone anyone else, right? But it shall happen that such a king or queen, upon his or her succession to the crown, shall be under the age of 12 years old, 12 years old, then every such king or queen shall make coronation or the first day of the meeting of the first parliament, as aforesaid, which shall first happen after such king or queen shall have obtained the said age of 12 years, all of which their majesties are contented and pleased shall be declared and acted and established by authority of this present parliament, and shall stand, remain, and be the law of this realm forever, right? So they're forever, and the same are by their heirs and majesties, and with the advice and consent of the Lord Spiritual Temporal Commons in Parliament, as assembled, and by the authority of the same declared, enacted, established accordingly, right? And be it further declared and enacted by the authority aforesaid, that from and after this present session of Parliament, no dispensation by non-obstante of or to any statute or any part thereof shall be allowed, but the same shall be held void and of no effect, except a dispensation to be allowed of in such statute, and except in such cases as shall be specially provided for by one or more bills to be passed during this present session of Parliament. All right. So the convention was most important, right? Because it was the people creating this law, right? And the king agreed to it. So again, it tells you there that see the declaration annexed at page 32, which I'm going to show you that if you want to see it. Right. So before we get into that, statutes and documents. Right. This is again. So the part I just read out, section 2, they chop and tailed it. They're not allowed to touch it. And this is section 3. Provided that no charter or grant or pardon granted before the 3 and 20th day of October in the year of our Lord, 1688, shall be in any ways impeached or invalidated by the Act, but that the same shall be and remain in the same force and effect in law, and no other than if this act had never been made, right? And it goes in and it talks about it. So I just want to make sure we're now going back to, I think it was 31. So at page 31, it tells you what the actual declaration was. I believe the Licensing Act. It might be in the back of this book. That there's a full declaration in here. I can read out all the paperwork, the letters that were sent. They're all in this book. Ashby versus White is in here. The case of the 7 bishops is in here. Everything's in this book, right? So why am I bringing it up to you, and why am I showing you literally this book, right? Because it's crucially important that people understand that it says forever 3 times in the English Bill of Rights, and it says for all time to come once, and then it makes those other references to forever in there. These people knew, they weren't stupid, they knew what it meant, and it comes from the Convention Parliament. So why do you think they top and tailed one element, and why do you think they deleted the other element, and why is it you think all of these free-man of the landers are completely ignoring the subject of the realm? All I'm doing is making sure everyone gets what I'm talking about. So let me go back to this one before I go any further, because it's really important to understand it, right? So I've just give you a readout what it says in that book, right? When we go and do the seminars, one of the things you should have noticed about that is when everyone turned around and said online learning, everyone knows that you're not learning anything when you're online, right? You learn by interaction in the classroom, etc. So when we go out and we put the big banners up in the seminars and we talk through this and I show you the books and people contact me and say, Graham, I want to understand this. No one out there. So when Rupert Lowe starts talking about the parasites of the legal profession, he's talking about solicitors, lawyers, barristers and judges that are parasites. The whole of the system has been literally destroyed, right? So I've just give you a readout. There are other elements to this. I could go through the whole of the Act of Settlement. And what I might do is just show you briefly, because I think it's important, that I show you the Act of Settlement, right? And the reason I want to show you this is because I want you to understand what it says. You remember what I've said to you before? With reference to, let me go back to that camera. Remember what I've said to you about the short title and the long title are really important. So again, this book tells you the Act of Settlement, that's the short title. The long title is really important. And then in effect, you have a preamble that tells you what's going on. An act for the further limitations of the Crown, right? And better securing the rights and liberties of the subject. Better securing. And then what it does at point 4, which I am hopefully going to show you straight off, if I read you all of it, you would be jumping up and down. Again, there's lots of references here to 1, 2, 3, 4. There it is there, right? So I'm going to go, there it is there. I'm going to try and bring it down so you can see it clearly. All I'm doing is showing you, this is a book that's over 100 years old. No one ever talks about this stuff anymore. Again, it's on my other books, but have a look at that, right? I've told you before, and I'll tell you again what it says. There's part 4, chapter 4 of it. And whereas the laws of England are the birthright of the people thereof, and all the kings and queens who shall ascend the throne of the realm ought to administer the government of the same according to the said laws, and all of the officers and ministers ought to serve them respectively according to the same. The said Lords spiritual, temporal, and the commons do therefore further humbly pray that all the laws and statutes of the realm for securing the established religions and rights and liberties of the people thereof, and all other laws and statutes of the same now in force, may be ratified and confirmed, and the same are by his majesty, by and with the advice of the consent of the said lords spiritual, temporal, and commons, and by authority of the same ratified and confirmed accordingly, right? And again, Hallam, various other people on there, and authorities for the Bill of Rights. Everything's on there that you need to know. Right. Why is that so important? Because that, again, was made in 1700. It was also the architects of that bill were the same people who created the English Bill of Rights. And they was telling you again that these liberties and rights are forever, right? And they are your birthright. Now, I'm going to ask you all a question, right? I want you not to be in shock and horror as I ask this question, right? What do you think? Simple question, right? Muslims can come here, Jews can come here, right? Any other person can come here and tell us that the Quran can't be touched. It's the absolute word of the Quran. So we've got a Bill of Rights that tells you this can never be touched, right? The English have this as an inheritance. We have the right to keep and bear arms for self-defense. Why is it that we're the only group of people that are not allowed to refer to this and say, hang on a minute, we've actually got documents that we all decided, right, that was forever, right? So you need to start standing up for your Bill of Rights. And what we've got to do is stop this nonsense that we're getting from all these other people. The only thing these other people need to concentrate on is the English Bill of Rights and constitutional law. That's it. They need to refer to the Glorious Revolution. It was so important to England, right? Now, getting back to the point that I was talking about with Northern Ireland, right? Crucially important, right? People often overlook this. You've got two groups of people in Northern Ireland. You've got loyalists who are loyal to King Billy. That's what they are. Loyal to the Bill of Rights. And loyal to the protections of their people and the Protestants and the right to keep and bear arms, and all and singular. So all of the rights, either all of them or singular, they can bring that up in a court of law, right? Then you've got another group of people called Unionists, which are loyal to the Union, right? The political union. The political union brought Roman law into an English Parliament. And then in the same way as you had cross-pollination between common law and canon law, which is in effect admiralty law, whatever way you want to describe it as, canon law is constructed by the Roman Catholic Church, right? It's ecclesiastical law, basically canon law in the way it's constructed. There was a cross-pollination of common law and canon law, right? The cross-pollination was worse than that, because when you brought in the Roman law from the Scottish Parliament and they was overrepresented in an English Parliament, that was the start of the destruction of England, right? Here's the kicker to the Unionists in Northern Ireland. King Billy the person who protected you, King Billy, who created the English Bill of Rights, the Act of Settlement, and protected the Protestants after we had been persecuted, raped, murdered, etc. by the Catholics, led by Jesuits, right? So normal Catholics weren't a problem. Mercenaries were a problem, but the Jesuits led that, right? Because the Jesuits are the military wing of the Roman Catholics. I want every Northern Ireland person to listen to what I'm about to say. King Billy did not approve, did not assent, and said no to a political union. I'm going to say that again. King Billy, the Prince of Orange, said no to a union with Scotland. He said it's not a good idea, it won't work, we don't want to do it. So King Billy was protecting you, the Northern Irish in particular, and England, from Roman law jurisdiction being brought into an English Parliament. I think he was a pretty wise man. I've got to be honest with you. And then, after his demise, right, because the king never dies, after his demise, Queen Anne was brought in. She was wrongly counselled that it'd be a good idea, and she allowed the union. And from that point on, we started being destroyed. Does everyone understand what I just said? And this is in particular, I am telling the Northern Irish, snap out of this union nonsense, right? I am a constitutionalist. I am a Protestant. I've got no issue with Roman Catholics. I've got every issue with the Jesuits. I don't like, and I'm going to put to the people again in this, right? There has been a number of references, in my opinion, wrongly, to Judeo-Christianity, right? Right. I'm going to ask a question. If Jews and Christians are compatible, why is it that in the mid-1800s they created the Jews Relief Act and the Oath Act to create a separate oath that allowed Jews to take the oath to become members of Parliament, and within years parts of the English Bill of Rights started to get erased by stealth without anyone telling anyone, that allowed Jews to become barristers, lawyers, privy councillors and judges. But this is the kicker. If we are a Judeo-Christian nation and they are compatible with Christianity, why did they not swear the Christian oath? Why did they refuse to swear the Christian oath? And why is it that we had to rewrite our constitution to allow them to rule over us, to be a lawmaker, or in the common law and as in parliamentary lawmaker? Why is it that we had to rewrite the oath for them to take the oath to go in there? Why is it they would not take a Christian oath if they're compatible with us? So what I'm doing is asking the question, right? I'm asking a question. If people want to talk about Judeo-Christian nations, why is it that Judaism and the people that follow that religion refuse to take a Christian oath? Why is it that Jews in Israel and some places in England, if you say the name Jesus Christ, they'll spit at you? If anyone utters that name around them, they'll spit at you. And I just I want to really emphasize this. I have never ever seen a Muslim spit when they hear the name Jesus Christ. In fact, Muslims accept that Jesus Christ was a very important person. They don't believe he was the Messiah, right? But they do believe that he was a very, very important person. Right? I don't know the full details of what they believe. I used to. I've read quite a bit from Dr. Bill Warner, and I've interviewed him a number of times. But does everyone understand the question I just asked? Right? So there's a number of elements there. One from one towards Northern Ireland, that unionists in Northern Ireland need to understand that Kim Billy absolutely did not approve of, and it could be one of the reasons why he demised, that he absolutely did not want a union with Scotland. In fact, he actually said that the two nations don't like each other. It ain't never going to work, right? You do not want that. In fact, the better situation was of 1603, where there were two separate executives, right? Because Scotland is its own nation and England is its own nation. Just to make sure. So do you all understand what I've just said? So I'm hoping everyone understands what I've just said. There is a lot more to this that I could go in and speak about. I'm not going to go into the full part of this, but I might actually bring up one other element. Because I do think I think it's important enough that people. I've shown you the statute where Jesuits are actually. This is in 1829. The Jesuits are actually banished from England. Jesuits have actually been banned from more countries anywhere in the world than the Jews. Right. So people often say the Jews have been banned from this country, that country. The Jesuits have been banned from more, being more troublesome and causing, in effect, more problems for any host nation that they're involved with, right? And it's because of the Roman, because of the Roman element to it, and they are the military wing of in effect, the Roman Empire, right? I'm just going to see if I can find this for you, because it is important, whether or not it is in there. Coronation Oath Act is in there. Oath Supremacy, Allegiance to Wills, Toleration Act, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration Against Transformation, Triennial Act, and let me see if I can go and find it. I do want to make sure. Oh, it is the appendix I was looking at. Impeachment of Earl Clarendon. Resolutions of the House of Commons. All of this information is in there. Resolution of the House of Lords. All of this information is in there. The exclusion, poor law. There's lots of information in there. Let me go back and see if I can find the part that I'm looking for, because I do think it's important that I show you that. Don't forget, this is a basic education book in 1905. Petition, oath of allegiance, oath act, oblivion act, conformity act, pardon, prerogative. Right. I'm not sure if it'd be in here, but it should be. I've got it in one of the other books. Convention Parliament 55 to 58. I won't go looking for it. Oh, what's in there? Lord Lieutenant of Counties 9 to 38. So the Lord Lieutenant of the Counties is still in there. The Lord's House of England, original jurisdiction. House of England, original jurisdiction, 2017. All of this information is in this one book. Right? And there it is. Right? So, and that's a really old book. Is it in there? I don't think so. I'm not sure if I could bring that up for you, so I don't particularly want to start messing about with it. Right, that's it. Does everyone understand what I've just gone through? So again, you have just seen Anthony Fauci plead the fifth. He's giving, whilst it's easy to be angry, always always take the positive, right? And a positive is this. He's just giving you an education. The highest paid bureaucrat in America, with the best legal team money can buy in the United States of America, and he pleaded the fifth, right? In other words, he exercised his right to remain silent, right? You see how he did it. He didn't answer any questions whatsoever, even to the point where they said, turn around and look at the people standing behind you. He didn't do anything. He pled the sixth, right? Because he understands exactly the process. Do not answer a single question. Do not incriminate yourself in any way whatsoever, because the state will prosecute you, or in this case, they will push that evidence across. And now everyone in America can see. I mean, he's quite entitled to plead the fifth, right? It is his right to plead the fifth. The problem with pleading the fifth, when you've been pardoned all the way back to 2014, don't look good, does it? Right? Because he could have said anything he wanted to, and he knew he couldn't be charged. But instead, so someone is protecting someone. Who are they protecting? That's it. Right. So I'm going to go forward and have a look at this. He is definitely worried. No, I agree. May Jesus Christ of Nazareth bless you abundantly, Graham Moore. Neil Russell, thank you very much. Only oneers, Gordon Mum. So don't forget, everyone, send this out. So I want you to like the video. It's crucially important. If you're on Rumble or you're on YouTube, come over to Rumble, subscribe to the channel. We've got to push this over 10,000 subscribers. We're creeping up through the year. We want to get well in excess of 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And don't forget to share, right? But most importantly, I want people to understand this, right? As subjects of the realm of England, you are protected by a Bill of Rights that says forever 4 times, right? You are protected by a Bill of Rights and another document called the Act of Settlement that tells you it is your birthright. You must stand up and say you are English. You must claim your rights. So anything starts happening to you, section out the Bill of Rights and say, well, actually, that goes against the Bill of Rights. I'm gonna make a claim on that, etc. You've got to start doing that. You've got to start pushing this forward, right? But I will say, good night, God bless. Don't forget what I believe in. The Constitution is the solution. So good night, God bless to everyone. Au revoir, tiddly poo, and all that. What's that say? Chuck money is so funny. Right.